Well, friends, that was a treat. I think it's a glimpse into the future. And judging from the number of questions, there are over 93 of them. I don't know how to handle this here. Seriously. Hi, Hari. Let me begin and try and club a few of them so that everybody gets a little bit, and I hope some people get all of it, The first question is from Kanan Dhruv, founder of RFGI. She's a global shaper at the World Economic Forum. She's asking, if governments played a big role in creating disruptions, how can we disrupt the way governments function?
Now again, this report was about technology, not about disrupting the government. But again, three simple points, because we had actually this discussion about how to create effectiveness in creating the supply chain line. We discovered three things. First of all, as we discussed, a lot of funding come to public funding, and usually the matrix of this public funding is actually not well known, not well tracked, and not well monitored. So the first thing we encourage government to do is basically to make public what exactly the intent they have on the R&D, and engage in that dialogue and discussion up front to what they want to invest in what. And again, the same thing as a private company. What's the bet, and what's the four things extra they want to do if the bet does not function? Typically, when we say that to government, they start to scratch their head and say, yes, typically we don't do that, and actually we're afraid of doing it because usually government try to remain in control. That's the second aspect. It's not about control, it's about discovery that the money that you spend is called an investment. And when it's an investment can have two types of returns, social return and private returns, but there is a part of risk. And the only way to mitigate that risk, or the part of the endogenous risk that you can do, is actually not to have the control, but to make sure you interwork with companies. Now, most of the time we've seen governments starting to take that by saying, I will invest myself to promote small companies, take seeds, money, and try to invest. Now, we don't want government to basically displace the marketplace. What we want is that the governments let it go and basically don't put the seed, but basically start to look again, not in pre-planning, but 10 years ahead, what are 2-3 things that they want the country to be. And most of the time we encourage the government to think that way. By 2025, what do you want to be your societal role in India is the key question. And usually that work is somehow done, most of the time is not complete, and it's not done to the filters of disruptive technologies. Third thing is always the same. When you talk to a Bill Gates, the way he runs his foundation, the question is not money, the question is process. They have just so many things that they can solve with the money they have, but don't have the talent to do that. So you need to recognize, as well as the government, that it's not how big you are that matters, is to recognize that maybe if you're good in 2 things, you're likely to be much better than government that are bad in everything. So usually pick two ideas, it's usually enough, and it's much better.
Thank you. Water is a very scarce resource. Why is there no specific mention of the number of water technologies? Number 2, what is your take specifically on solar energy? Is it hype or reality?
Now, the water, as we have mentioned, we believe are part of the 5 contenders. The questions we have is that on the water side, we look at all these technologies. They're just obviously proof of markets exist. So no, I'm not saying it's not important. We're saying, are they going to basically disrupt as fast every type of the value chain? We came to conclusion that in all the case we've looked at, depending on the countries, it's not going to be as global as the other one. Now, in countries like yours, where the scarcity is much more important and the price hike of in a resource like water is likely to be much more important, yes, it should be part of the list. So again, bear with me, this list has been compromised to make it global. I think I encourage you, and again, I don't know enough about India, of the one that you have to pick. Typically, we believe that on the 10 we have taken, possibly, it is my first view doing that maths in the plane, 5 or 6 are likely to be applicable in full force here. And I definitely believe that water purification is likely to be quite important. Again, quantum computing is possibly one market you possibly can accelerate on top of that. So again, bear with me. I'm not saying these are the 10 for you. You just have to make the flavor on yourself and shape that. Now, on the solar, it's, again, the same thing. The question is not the throughput. Yes, it's there. I'm a big fan, obviously, of solar energy. The question to me is that when we try to put the maths together, we came to conclusion, and possibly we are wrong, that at least the way to store that energy was the most complex thing. And today, if we look at the energy storage that we see, they are pretty much, at least on the size of B2C or in the size of putting that in a lot of value chain, it seems that the other type of energies are still rolling. And the reason is very simple. Even green energy, let's not fool ourselves, will take quite a lot of time to take 10 to 20% of the electricity energy. So it takes time. And the reason is not that it's not promising. It takes time, but also it changes radically even the industry of electricity. When you talk about smart metering and green energy, you have a very different system of energy system than the one that used to exist. It happens in the telecom industry where you move from a basic cable downstreams to an interactive broadband, and it took 20 years to function correctly. So the same thing here. We are extremely excited, but we believe that the threshold of the 10 years in the way we look at that makes it slightly not yet at the level. Again, niches is something that you should look at, but it's not part of our definition. That's why it's not part of my list.
How do you think the automation of knowledge work will change the way schools and colleges function?
I think that it will change. It will change it dramatically.
Dramatically.
Dramatically. Now, McKinsey has done a lot of work in education, and we're pretty excited about that. But here is the interesting insight. You can do a lot of technology and create a lot of universities based on, this kind of automation and all that. But the key assets that you have is not you and me today. Obviously, today we are simply the skill expression of accumulation of knowledge and learnings from our school and in the past. But what drives this knowledge of school is usually your envy to learn, your mentors, and possibly 2 or 3 professors in your life that basically make the click and say, I want to do that because it's pretty cool, or some friends. So it's actually much more psychological, emotional binders of that thing. And we discover that no matter type of technology used in classroom, outside classroom, and the like, what makes the difference between a good system and a bad system is the teacher, is the interface, the humanity of the interface, and the mentor. Whatever technology you use today, the technologies can displace stock of work or delivery, but possibly not the effectiveness of that delivery, which is the interface. Now, more and more you see this 3D interface and all that. They're still not there yet. Possibly if you're in Japan, you prefer this kind of element to it, much more than in Belgium, where the culture is not that emotion behind. So remember, it's going to be augmenting. But what I think will happen is that if we can put and invest the best teacher with the best technologies, then we will have a fascinating system. And here is the point of the responsibility of the government, is to make sure that we finally pay the school teachers for what the externality they bring, select them much better, and give them the power to basically experiment and ingest these technologies to the benefit of the education. That's a big challenge, but we believe it could be done.
How do you see this technological revolution benefiting the unskilled and the uneducated people in India?
Some are quite evident. If you look at the mobile internet, the beauty of the mobile internet is that provided obviously people can get the device and the link to it, there's just a lot of proof that obviously you can create micro market, micro payments. You can even substitute some of the payment if you believe that Bitcoins can be one of these technologies element and the like. But there's just a lot of evidence that actually the poor can finally access markets to these technologies. And again, if you look at the poor in countries like Africa, where I've been working quite extensively, the key element of technologies was that for kids we were 20 kilometers remote with no way to basically go into a higher point of connectivity. The fact that finally you can create remote markets and not have to basically travel 20 kilometers by foot was creating new social inclusion and new ways to cooperate, new way to interface. The more interface you have, the more interconnections you have, the more marketability you have. So I still believe that mobile internet infrastructure is possibly a real way to do things. Two, obviously, the productivity is not only a question of talent and the rest, it's also physical health. Obviously, everything which is linked to genome and all these things. I'm a big believer that very quickly some of the classical illness that have killed a lot of the poor because they couldn't access to medicine will becoming much better and much further ahead, with a huge consequence for the society of India, because when society start to basically pass the hurdle of a certain level of non-poverty, the number of kids start to decrease. It goes quickly to 7 to 5, and today the striking fact is that in markets where money has been there, like China, what we see in China is that the illness that happens to be the most frequent in China seems to be, cardiac disease or all the kind of disease that it took the Western worlds 80 years to get. So again, we will see, but I also believe that there is enough of this technology, if they're well used, especially on the healthcare side and on the connectivity side, that will help to make the next billion, whatever you talk about it, much more amenable to connect.
I have so many questions. What I would request you is to address, maybe a line or two on each one of them, because, there's so much of empirical evidence and data that you have, which is very interesting, but I'll not be able to do justice to many of them. How does a small entrepreneur use these technologies or benefit from them?
We have tons of cases, and for the people who ask questions, please drop me a mail. I will give you even name of people to connect. But what we find in the process of doing this work is that the most innovative element on these technologies were not companies, but small entrepreneurs. Okay. So let's be very frank. Personally, in Belgium, for instance, the best energy storage is done by three persons from my university and a connection of two guys. So again, this discovery happens very quickly. They need to go to the seed capital. These numbers are big enough for you to try. You will not necessarily be the biggest innovator, but there's just a lot of things you can do. I'm totally convinced of that. For one simple reason, the infrastructure is becoming public. Those technologies are starting to be at a point where for them to function, the cost is very low. So the marketability and the entry to market is actually quite small. So there the question is, how speedy you're going to be, because when the market entries are small, obviously a lot of people will come. So it's a lot about creativity and speed. And usually speed comes from young entrepreneur, creativity too.
Is McKinsey considering to do a mid-term review of this project 3 to 5 years from now?
I think every year I want to see whether I'm wrong. And I'm quite sure I am. But at the end of the day, we want to continue to look at this space because it's part of our social and actually client responsibility.
Is there anything that you've come across or you have developed? What will life be for a citizen in 2025?
That's a big question. For one sake, I likely going to be not at McKinsey anymore. I will be retired, so I don't know. No, I think We used to have a comic in France and Belgium. We say, the past was stupid, the future is bright and great. I'm a big believer that the future will be obviously much better. Now, again, the point is that this technology, nobody knows how the social impact will be, let's be frank. But what struck us again is that if you look again at the simple maths, the maths tells you that at pace at which it goes, what we've seen in the last 15 years will happen in the next less than 5 years or 7 years. So the speed at which it changes will be dramatically, the metabolism is quite high. So if you take an horizon of 25, I don't know whether it's going to be the singularity as people say it. I don't think so. But I believe a lot of things will have changed. I also believe that if you look at these maths and if you look at the growth rate of different type of economies, this part of the world will be an exciting place to be, that's for sure.
What we'll do is we'll try and find out a few authors who have done some seminal amount of work on the social impact of technologies with their help, and we'll put it up on our website for those who want to know what kind of life will it be in 2025. What are your top 3 expectations of major changes in the healthcare system?
Let me put it this way. Again, I can look from a technology-centric view, or I look, again, from a business point of view. My vision from a business point of view is that the healthcare system is likely to change dramatically because of 3 things. First, if you look at on the supply chain, if you look at the major pharmaceutical company, and again, that's me talking, not McKinsey, but from my own perception, there is too much spend on marketing versus R&D. Marketing is higher than R&D. There is a lot of me-too products versus basically major innovation. That system could function as far as, we can still fund that system. The day we will not fund it, which is starting to happen in Europe, because the public spending is just becoming too high, the industry will have to face some deep challenge. And again, I think we will see back a system where R&D and true innovation are going to be necessary. The second thing is that the supply chain will change dramatically because I believe the hospitals, the way they function, will need to work with different set of technologies. Medical schools actually today don't operate very well with technologies. Most of the surgeons are very bad in leveraging technologies, is still very functional. So I think the system of delivering healthcare will change dramatically, and the functionality of medical schools and like will change. And the third thing is that the day you got genomics and the like, obviously there's all the ethical issue about what to do with that, but fundamentally a lot of the problem that people face in some of the fundamental illness are likely to be a bit eradicated. So all that basically are 3 elements that makes healthcare going to be radically change. Now, on the technology disruption side, obviously genomic is key. Advanced material is fundamental for that. And again, mobile internet is big. Because again, with mobile and connectivity, you're going to reach a population that today is enabled to get care.
This is a fantastic question. What are the entrepreneurial opportunities that are not driven by technologies?
Good question. Again, I just tried to make a non-extraordinary answer. Non-extraordinary answer, as I said, 50% of GDP growth is nothing to do with technology. So again, if you are Amazon today and you can think about disrupting technology-wise the industry of retail by having drones, shipping your stuff. No, that will not happen because it takes too much time. But the real disruption of somebody like Amazon as a business model, as we all know, beside the technology, is basically to have done a merger of that old technology of internet with retailer, and basically say, I'm going to give you daily deal and a way to basically making sure that any time that you want something, you don't have to repeat 5 steps to make it happen. If you're trusted customers, I make it easy for you. So yes, it was enabled by technology, but it was a common business sense of eliminating pain points. And so again, in my world, in my work, most of the time, technology is possibly only 10% of the total. 90% is basic business practice. As an entrepreneur, I encourage you to look the same way as we look at technologies. Look at supply chain, look where there is cross-subsidization, change that. Technology can help. Most of the time it's not even technology, it's just business model that needs to be changed.
Thank you. Most disruptive technologies need to be sold to people whose livelihood are also going to change drastically. Do you think people will start accepting technologies quicker and quicker?
My answer will be very frank. I don't know, but I'm always surprised how people pick technologies. Now, I remember I was presenting something on technologies, and it was 2 years ago. And I've got twins of 5 years. And I came back from at home with a big TV screen, and my son went to the TV screen. At that time, he was 3 years old, and started to flip the screen. I said, "Daddy, the TV is broken, it does not work." So I was just amazed to see how quickly people can ingest. But also what was interesting is that he was surprised, but the first thing he did was to think hard about, was that stupid to buy a broken TV, or was it something like a trick? And then he tried every type of button or whatever else, and then finally discovered that after putting the power and explain a bit, he was starting to play with the remote control and the 3D, and got very quickly into it. So I think with fresh eyes, technologies are basically accumulated quite easily into people. Now, obviously, all people like us, most of the time, we tend to rely on a pattern of technologies, so we're not the most innovative in implementing.
We here in Ahmedabad have done a seminar on 3D printing, and we came to the conclusion that it is more for prototype development rather than mass manufacturing, as you also mentioned. So, in a sense, it is a very limited technology. Now, your view is different fundamentally from this. So could you please highlight the future scope of mass manufacturing, which is also going to be present, where 3D is not likely to compete?
Yes. So the reason why 3D is not yet mass market is obviously the fact that you have two main pain points. Obviously, is the device itself to basically print, and the time it takes to do it, and obviously the place where you have to locate the materials and all that. Now, we look at that and we came to conclusion that in each of these pain points, the speed at which solutions start to be made is actually quite fast. And two, again, in some case, don't confuse volume with value. And so I was explaining you the example of entertainment and Lego. That's only one small part of the B2C, but that means that if this happens, you change dramatically the way the licensing model of Hollywood is working. It changes dramatically the way Lego is working. So that's 2% of GDP just changing. Now, if you look at everything which is small items and the like, it's usually small, but if you aggregate all of them in terms of even purchasing, you will be surprised if you're the head of purchase of your own companies, it's 10% of your spending. Okay, so it starts to accumulate. No, obviously it will take time. I'm not saying it will not take time, but what we have discovered is that there are just a lot of innovation on the three aspects, which will make 3D quite fast. And again, it's not only a question of cost. As I said, it's a question of value equation. The day you can do manufacturing, but versioning, which means your price point of whatever product you want to do, it's not 10, but become 12, 13, and 14, it's directly into your bottom line, so people will start to reinject that value into R&D innovation, simply to continue to basically create the rents. And so when you start putting all that together, there is scope for this model to go much faster.
There is a depletion of natural resources happening all over the world. Do we have enough natural resources to support the devices that are likely to bring in these revolutions?
even within McKinsey, we have a lot of debates, and among academics and scientists, there are a lot of debates. Here is one interesting statistics that I always use because it's important. If you believe economics, scarcity means price hike. And if you look at the price of resource around the world, okay, take woods, take whatever else, if you took the real price of wood on a structural basis, or the price of a certain type of resource, the price doesn't go up. The only case where it goes up is when you have market power. You call the OPEC, or you could do these things, but it's the extraction value. But so far, it's also a bit of myth of saying there is scarcity. Yes, there are obviously scarcity and things, but just to give you an example, the number of wood supply in Europe has grown in 1 century by 30%, the number of forests. Now, obviously, it's not the same quality of the Amazon. I'm not saying you should not care about it. And I'm quite sure that in the water, we start to see peak price and all that. So we have to be careful. But I also believe that, technologies, resource and the like, people will be one day clever enough to make sure it can fly. So I'm still quite optimistic. I'm quite sure that obviously you need to be much more diligent and you have to change the behavior of people. But I also believe that when this scarcity will come, like usual, you as an entrepreneur, you will find a way to basically extract value from that scarcity. So, you will create renewable resource much better, you will do different things. So the funny thing about that is that maybe it will be too late because it will take 20 years. It's the question of timing. But I also believe today it's time to look at that, look at business opportunity versus the other way around.
This is the other side of the coin. All these technologies that we have seen lead to automation, efficiency, and higher output. What about jobs for people?
Exactly. It's a very important question. As I said, again, I will make a joke, again from this comic that I was quoting before. He said, I don't need a job, I want a salary. But the point he was making is that you don't need a job either. What you want is to feel useful and to basically have a purpose in life. Now, usually it comes in the work for most of the people because it's a lot of the time we take. Now, it's also about creativity. Now, your job does not need to be defined by tasks that you do every day. It could be creative and all these things. I'm taking the pride of working in McKinsey not because I work in McKinsey, because I can do the things I want to do. I can shape clients, I can basically do different things, I can, and so on. As an entrepreneur, you can shape that too. So the point here is really about jobs will not be for everyone. It will be much more self-selective. Unfortunately, there will be possibly a job destruction. And when we look today at these technologies, we have found one interesting thing. They displace quite a lot, true. But if you look at the value creation, if they represent 50% of GDP, even if this technology basically are not neutral and basically are much more capitalistic by 10%, if you don't have them, okay, half of the growth will disappear versus half of the growth that will give you, if it's 5% a year, possibly 25 to 30% more of that pie. So 30% out of 50 is still quite a lot more. So yes, the gap is increasing, and maybe the question is not about technology, is that in total, do we grow sufficiently fast to basically accommodate enough of the labor? And do we have an education system by which labor will be successful enough for people to use it in creativity in different type of setting than just, the classical Taylorism type of model that we seems to continue to have.
For educational institutions, instead of having electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, should they run programs based on these 12 technologies?
My answer is actually no. My answer is that before jumping that fast, again, these technologies are only interpretable to the extent that actually we don't have only engineers, but we have engineers, economics, entrepreneurship, and all that. I think the functional approach or the divisional approach of education has obviously good things because you cannot catch up all the time, but having a sound basis of the interaction of economics, engineering, and all that, or even medicine, is actually, I think, more important. I myself sometimes get frustrated to not remember my biology course, not to have invested too much in physics, or have never got the chance to basically understand, genomic enough. So I think this is much more a way of saying, let's go back to the basic of general courses, from which after that you can pick up.
Online education is likely to be a very big phenomena in China, India, and many other countries. Why doesn't it feature prominently in the 12 disruptive technologies?
As I'd say, because it's important, it's already there. It's actually not that disruptive, to be quite honest. It's actually at this stage much more supplementing of the existing education system. And again, the acid test is that education is not the technology, it's not the distribution, i.e. online. Online creates a fascinating aspect, which is the accessibility. But if you don't have the quality of the lecture, you have nothing. So, and what we discover is that having good quality lecture and enough of that, yes, it exists in a few instances, but we're still far off the total curve of knowledge that will require for online education to basically take off to be that disruptive.
There are 3 on energy. Now we are close to 12 o'clock. We'll take 3 questions together and then we'll close. Companies focus on energy efficient ways of production, but emphasis on discarding the used product is not under active consideration. Do the upcoming technologies take care of the products even after usage to make it really eco-friendly in the long run? Second question, what are the major obstacles in the progress of renewable energy sector? And the third is, isn't there one big disruption that will affect us all? That's the end of the Q&A. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would just make one simple comment on the last one. The one which to me, we haven't found one only disruptive technologies, that will basically impact all of us. Maybe one day we could possibly push, or expected life expectancy to be, more than 120 years. That to me is possibly the most disruptive one, because from a social impact is big. Again, as biologists say to me, is that we are the only species on Earth who does not live 6 times the sexual maturity of the male. And it's typically apparently 18 to 21 for us. So we should be able to all live until 120. Now, that's not going to be, possibly it will happen one day, but if it happens, again, this 20, 30 years of expectation more will have fundamental element, because with no labor on top of that, with no way to sustain public policy and the tax system, we will have to be much more useful, which, by the way, we have lost in our culture of how all people can be useful. So again, this is possibly much more societal than anything else. I believe that it will possibly happen. But again, as entrepreneur, the good is that today, if you are 40, 20, or whatever else, in the next 10 years, there's a lot of things to be done. Make that in practice, and I'm quite sure India will become and will continue to be a very thriving country.
Thank you very much. I think a warm round of applause for the patient amount of question answers for you. Jacques.